The NFL Scouting Combine is in the books, and Deebo Samuel was traded. We got a lot to cover today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins, and we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins.
Joe, a lot to get into. Combine testing, I know this has always been an exciting time in how we conduct our processes because we, in years past, as we've done draft guides, individual draft guides, when we've done collaborative stuff, the athletic testing portion for a lot of the players that we do is the last box to check for a lot of these names. And it's been really fun for me because it's greatly diminished versus what it used to be. But athletic testing does have some degree of a influence on your grade. So it's been fun as each day has finished and the numbers come in courtesy of the new Amazon Web Services Next Gen Stats tool this year, which bravo, guys.
Yeah.
Totally
Well done.
revitalized my enthusiasm for consuming the combine content and makes everything a lot easier to find. It's NFL.com/combine/IQ is where you can find it if you want to check it out. I've had a lot of minute shuffling all throughout all of the grades that I have done with the testing. And it's like, all right, well, you're done. That's where you're going to be for me.
Yeah, man. You've done way more prospects than me, but even observing the combine over the last week, I found myself more confident in separating some tiers and guys that were close. It's like, okay, yeah, I've got legit stuff here that could be a meaningful tiebreaker. So it was good to get that info. And yeah, shout out to whoever made this happen with the NFL Combine IQ, man. It feels overdue, but I'm glad we're here. Between NFL Pro and that, brother, we've had some development here on things that we've been really wanting for a long time.
It's all that TV money trickle down.
Hey,
right?
baby, let's go. We'll watch football on every imaginable streaming service if we can get these types of resources.
That's what we're going to have to tell ourselves when we add more streaming services in the next 2 years to our
what's
docket
next
to watch all the games.
Yeah, I'm sure that will continue to happen.
Put one on Fubo,
I'll do that. What's another one? Yeah.
Well, one more free trial every year. Why not?
Okay. Shall we? I felt like JT O'Sullivan right there. That's a cool thing. Yeah.
Yep. The silent count.
Yeah. Okay. I want to talk about the top of the offensive tackle class. And
we should.
I see on the screen here, it says lingering questions. And obviously, Will Campbell's been a hot name. And I don't think anyone's surprised that he didn't check the length box. I didn't expect him to, right? He comes in, it was a 32 5/8 on the arms. And I think what's really challenging about Campbell is obviously there's not a lot of sub 33-inch arm left tackles in the league. I think there's 2 starting tackles in the league that have that type of length. Mm-hmm. But what I think is complicating about Will Campbell is just the height, right? Like to have, he's like 6'6", right? 6'6" with sub 33-inch arms. I think that makes short arms shorter. And I still think very highly of Will Campbell. He'll be a high grade for me, but it's kind of becoming impossible to overlook Armand Membou as a guy that should be in this conversation potentially as the first offensive tackle off the board, who does come in with desired length and then the athletic profile. I mean, you kind of saw it, dude. Like, I remember when we did him, I was like, why is there athletic concerns? Why is everybody forcing this guy inside the guard? And I don't know, like, I just feel like I just feel much more comfortable with him because he's checking boxes. And Campbell's a great athlete, dude, but I think we do have to start being realistic about who's really a tackle and who's really a guard here with those two guys.
I agree with everything you said. And from a tackle perspective, at least for me, it was less Will Campbell and it was more, what's the feedback going to be on Josh Simmons? And I know the sample size is a lot smaller. Membou's got a larger body of work to work with. Predictively speaking, that's going to be the top offensive tackle I'm mocking off the board is Membou at this point. The question is it Florida, New England? Is it the Jets have a vacancy at right tackle? The Raiders, I know they drafted DJ Glaze in the 3rd round last year to play right tackle, but that would be an upgrade. You don't let a promising, talented developmental tackle stop you from drafting a slam dunk guy like this if you feel like it's the best player on the board, right? Like that for me is the stratosphere for Armand. And turns out Josh Simmons with his patellar tendon tear says he's expected to be cleared in time for a
huge
April Pro Day. I mean, that's as good of a development as you could possibly have, which I don't think he'll go in the top 20 because of the smaller body of work in a breakout year and not having true athletic testing numbers and the medical element that's involved there. But he has a chance to save a 1st round stock for himself here, where you'd be worried if, think of Johnny Newton last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who had a medical question, played in the trenches, had a better body of work, but because there was a medical question that was lingering for a foot injury, he slid out of the 1st round altogether, despite what I thought was clearly like top 15, top 20 tape. So I'm with you 100% on Membou. And I'm with you 100% on Will Campbell. One of the best things about Will Campbell is his football IQ. And that to me kind of would not be mad. And you're getting really big brained here with ideas like this, but I would not be mad at all if you told me he ended up playing center.
You've seen some of this. Yeah.
Frank Ragnow build, right? Like,
yeah, Mitch Morse,
Ragnow,
Joe Pittman,
5, like that you could be a big body and play in there.
Yep.
But just the way that he sees, like he's calling protections and fronts and pressures out from left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
And when you could see it from there and call all that out, and then you take the length element, and if you have questions with it, like I think that's probably the best intersection of the football IQ element for him as a power center. It's really just that is a little bit more of a transition that you then have to take with the snapping element of it. Yeah. But he's a great football player, and he's going to be a really good starter for somebody. But it's more so just the question of what scheme you play and how that lends itself to different possible homes for you.
Heck of an athlete, man.
Yeah.
Real quick on Jalen Milroe. What's the best thing about Jalen Milroe?
His hands grew an inch in
Yo, so I forgot about that. I wasn't even going to get into that when I wrote this down. But yeah, I mean, unbelievable job growing your hands significantly.
The athleticism, which we didn't show.
Don't you feel like this would have been a great opportunity to show the athleticism? You know, the thing that you have.
Yes, but I'm sure the argument and the school of thought from the camp is they know you're explosive. They know you're athletic. If you test to a certain degree, all that's going to do is fuel the speculative change position narrative that exists around you because you are more of a developmental player.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess you see that a little bit, but it's like, I don't know.
It's like Lamar Jackson chose not to test, right? He actively chose not to run.
Different stratospheres. But although, I mean, look, Lamar went 32, right? Yeah. So if he was commonly accepted as the player he's become, well, he's not going 32. So there's that piece of it. How about this Mason Graham thing, Kyle? I know that you've been eaten alive by this a little bit by this one.
We're on the roster at 318. You show up at 296. I knew you weren't long. It's kind of the Will Campbell thing. Like I knew you weren't long, so I wasn't bummed out to find out that you put up or he had 32-inch arms. But there were a couple Michigan guys that were taller than what they were listed on the roster, and Mason was one of them. So he's taller. He's 20-something pounds less heavy. But I thought what made Mason Graham really attractive for me was how he moved for his size. And now you're telling me that he's potentially not that size anymore. So, like, I'm at the point where I just need a little bit more clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Did you drop all that weight to run like the wind, which we didn't get a chance to see because you didn't do all the on-field testing? Like, what's your playing weight? Don't get cute with me. Like, if I was doing an interview with Mason, I'd sit him down and say, what is your playing weight? What did you play last year?
Because you want to reconcile that against the athleticism.
If it was 296, I'd have a lot more questions about Mason Graham. I would.
Right.
So I know we got to get to break, but I have a few thoughts I want to throw your way too.
All right. We'll get to those on the other side of it. Folks, be sure to stick with us. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I miss my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets. If your first $5 bet wins, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
I want to give you some names on the defensive side of the ball. Do you have pen and paper?
Yep.
I know you usually have it on hand. Just because I don't want you to have to riff it off the top of your head. But I want you to tell me what order these names get drafted as of right now, like coming hot off the heels of the combine. Okay?
All right. I'm ready.
So let's start with Jalen Walker. Jihaad Campbell. Nick Emmanwori.
Brother.
James Pierce.
Why don't you just give me the four most difficult names that to forecast?
What order do those guys come off the board in April as of right now?
So Walker's just way smaller than we thought. And you start to think of him as like a stack linebacker, and that's just not where he's going to
play.
Right. He's a good downhill player as a stack backer, but in coverage, come on, dude. Like, it's not there. Jihaad Campbell ran really well, right? That feels like I like this tape. I really like Campbell. Emmanwori did the thing we expected him to do, right? So hard to not count it twice there, but
I didn't think he was going to do all that. Like, I thought
he was a little more.
I didn't think he was going to do all that. Like,
and then James Pierce can run really fast. We definitely knew that. I still think there's enough questions there about mass and ability to turn at his profile. Boy, got me twisted up on this, dude.
Good, yeah, because I was racking my brain around it, trying to slot these guys. I'll tell you what I have.
Please,
what I have.
Yeah.
So I have Campbell first, Emmanwori second, Walker third, and Pierce fourth.
Okay.
Anything you vehemently disagree with there? Or
no.
Did I let you off the hook?
And I appreciate that because I needed to be let off the hook because I was absolutely twisted up. The one thing I definitely agreed with is that Pierce will be last. I think the NFL has told us that they're a little funky on that profile.
Yeah.
And Campbell, kind of really a unique player.
I don't think he gets outside the top 20.
I mean, if Jack Campbell's a top 20 pick, certainly Campbell is, right?
I mean, this guy's got way better pass rush profile.
Did I just say? I said if Campbell's a top 20 pick, then so is Campbell. No, Lord.
If
Jack Campbell and Jihaad.
If Lions linebacker right. Campbell is
I stumbled into that
pick,
one.
Then Jihaad Campbell. Yeah, I think he's a top 20 pick. I think Emmanwori ceiling is cracking into, like, if you told me Seattle picked him with Mike McDonald, I'd be like,
boy,
yeah,
wouldn't that be nice, huh?
yeah.
He's got his Kyle Hamilton-ish guy.
Right. Not too many guys you can do some of those things with, and that's one of them. So
is he going to play for Miami? Can I ask the question? I mean,
what's that?
Emmanwori at 13?
Maybe. For 30-13 today, I gave them Campbell.
Okay. Yeah.
Pair him with Jordan Brooks, and suddenly you got a couple of
be good.
A second level that you haven't had in a long time in South Florida for linebackers.
And be good.
He can rush off the edge a little bit too and give you some versatility in that regard. So, and then Walker, I think it was the length for me. I'm not phased that you're 6'1", but you're 6'1", low 240s with 32s. I'm like, nah. Now your margin for error is a little bit more slim.
And all he did was measure, right? Like that's all he did.
Right.
That's just such a weird profile. It screams you got to play stack backer, and there's nothing clean about that.
Right.
Is there a Kyle Van Noy role for him? I think that's what he's got to try to figure out, right?
Yeah. Or be Devin White.
Don't in a world where you can be Kyle Van Noy or Devin White.
Be Kyle Van Noy.
every single time. That's a fun one, dude. You had me you legit had me twisted up. Good. So well done there. How about my guy Matthew Golden? I think we both have a ball to spike here. I think you have one to spike on Quinshon Judkins.
Yeah. Man, he tested great, didn't he?
Boy, he sure did.
Super.
I haven't watched him play, but he ran the same as Travion Henderson, right? Like basically the same. I don't think people expected that.
Yeah. And I think he outjumped Henderson too with like 17 extra pounds or 12 extra pounds, whatever it was.
Yeah, that was a bit unexpected. Golden, I was it you that brought up the GPS? Somebody brought up the GPS times with Golden, and I'm like, they're like, yeah, he never really hit a great number on the GPS. I'm like,
not me.
It wasn't you.
Not me.
I don't know. I don't know where you're trying to go with this, but I saw an extremely explosive player that has separation quickness and vertical receiving ability.
Right.
And he's been my wide receiver one because I value his traits over really what anyone else in this class offers. But man, I'll be honest with you. I went into the combine thinking for the Bills, like, all right, Derek Harmon or Matthew Golden at pick 30. Who are we picking? Neither.
Myles Garrett.
Right. Myles Garrett. But also neither of those players seemingly, I know you in the world of the NFL draft, you should never speak in absolutes, but the dream's over. How do those guys get to 30?
Yeah, I don't think they do. Now, Derek Harmon might if teams go edge rusher, but like Harmon carried his weight really well. I thought he moved really well as somebody who had a bunch of extra weight, then lost it to go to Oregon. And I think he's maintained really good athleticism after dropping the weight to come to Oregon and be a more disruptive player.
Shamar Stewart's a big name coming out of the weekend.
Top 10.
Yeah.
It happened. Top 10.
I think the exciting thing here is like, we knew he had a lot of physical upside from watching him at Texas A&M, but like this profile at the reduced weight, it kind of makes him more attractive to me.
I think so too.
He's down like 20 pounds, right? From like what he was listed at, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he was, dude, he verified at the Senior Bowl at 281. Now, you chug a gallon of water.
Listen,
at 8.35 pounds if it's room temperature.
I need to know the temperature of the water. I had the chemistry conversation that I expected. I'm no closer to understanding it. My niece, who's wants to be a scientist, she wants to be a physics professor, right?
Explain it to you.
She tried. She tried. But I'm sitting here like, so you're telling me if I take this glass of water and it's 40 degrees and I take another glass of water that's filled to the same level and it's 80 degrees, you're telling me the one that's 40 degrees is going to weigh more? She's like, yeah, talking to me about molecules and density. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not buying what you're selling. I'm not buying. It might be true, But this is not
something, water, right?
Like, brother, this is not this guy who's just lived in the world of football for the last 10 years. It's not. I'm not picking up what you're laying down. So we did have the conversation. It was everything I feared it would be.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I have a couple other winners. I know you have some other winners. Do you want to hit them now? Do you want to go to break?
Yeah, let's go to break, talk winners, and talk about the commander, Deebo Samuel.
Great.
Stick with us.
I clicked it double. I did it.
Kyle, I mean, I think at this point, we're just expecting you to do the right thing every time.
Right, and do the next right thing.
That's all you can do, man.
As was sung in the Disney hit children's movie Frozen, right? I guess it was that Disney 1 or Frozen 1 or Frozen 2. I think it's Frozen 1.
I regret to inform you that these movies have played 1 billion times in my house. I don't.
Do you have the Tonys?
We do, but they're not a big ticket around here. So
there's no moving pictures with the Tonys, right? So it's a little harder selling.
Yeah, we're more of a Danny Go. You doing the Danny Go YouTube?
Not familiar with Danny Go.
Oh, no. Brother, it's coming. It's coming.
Great.
It's coming.
Let's come to the table with some testing risers. Man, Ariante Ursary is making it really hard not to really like put him in the first round of all my mocks the rest of the way with this supersized offensive tackle, 331-pound offensive tackle from Minnesota, played left tackle. I thought he performed and showcased himself very well at the Senior Bowl. Then he comes to the combine and runs 5 flat at 330-plus pounds.
Yeah.
With prototypical length. You see the burst for him when he's running his zone tracks, whether he's on the front side or the back side. You see the athleticism that he brings to the table. Now, at 330, you don't have the most high mirror athlete when he's moving backwards, but I think he's plenty long. I think he's got plenty heavy hands. I think he's plenty hard to play through. So we talked about the top of the tackle class, but Ursary is a name for me that just keeps incrementally sliding up the board, and I'm looking down and he's pushing the top 35, and I'm like, positional value wise, like, wouldn't phase me at all if he ended up going in a late first round.
Toolsy tackles, right? That's the NFL always loves them. So yeah, he looked good. I think there's a lot of technical work on tape to figure out, but the physical upside's really good. I think when we talked about him, you came in over the top with a comment that's bothered me since that moment, where I was like talking about this technical work, and you're like, well, did you know he started 53 games or something? You had that's the thing about him. You're like,
right.
Oh, crap. But if he's committed to that growth mindset, he's got all the stuff.
Give me a name.
Maxwell Harrison, cornerback, Kentucky. I haven't watched him, but boy, did he. I mean, obviously he ran really fast, but I've seen him mocked in the first round. Is this a legit first round corner?
I think with this level of long speed and explosiveness to go with, I think he has really good like short area twitch. He was a good tackler in 23. He had I believe it was a shoulder injury this year that kind of kept him out of the lineup for an extended period. And then I think when he came back, I think it kind of bothered him with the tackling. So he saw like a big time regression in his tackling this year. But if you're basing it off the 23 tape and now have this testing that you can apply with it, like, yeah, I think it's probably back 8 picks of the first round, whether it's Minnesota or Baltimore or any of those other teams. I think he is very much a legitimate contender to end up going in the first round. The next name that I wanted to bring to the table here from a testing perspective is, let's see, I just lost my spot. Jacob Parrish running he had 10-4 track background. There's another corner. Now, I don't know, Joe, if I would put him in the potential fit with Minnesota or Baltimore type stratosphere like I just did with Maxwell Hairston in the back, 8 picks in the first round. But for him to give the affirmation that he can run when he's 196, him and Jalen Noel at wide receiver are a couple of shorter guys that weighed in close to 200 pounds and ran really well. I think guys like that are compact and dense but run well really represent themselves well in this environment. Like, I think those guys are probably both second-round picks at this stage.
No doubt. No doubt. I'm glad we got to Jacob Parrish ahead of the event. And I started like talking to different people. I was like, hey, you see this Jacob Parrish? Like, yeah, nobody's really talking about it. I was like, so I felt really
I know
smart
Connor
going
Rogers
into it.
is a big fan.
Good.
So we got some company in the space.
I want to ask you a question before we talk Deebo.
Okay.
And this is the world is your oyster here. You've done a lot of players, right? You watched a lot of these players.
Yeah.
Is there a player for you that coming out of the event from an athletic testing perspective really like either greatly exceeded what you expected or the other way where I expected a lot more and you didn't get it? Like, is there who's the biggest discrepancy based on functional athleticism seen on tape for you? I know that's a meaty question, but is there a guy that stands out?
Tez Johnson's the obvious answer.
Oh boy, small and slow. We can't do it. 100. I mean, he's 155 pounds. You can't.
So here's the bigger issue I have with Tez Johnson. They said on the broadcast, he told the broadcaster, the production team, that he has a professional chef that's making him meals to try to get him to gain weight. And he lost 2 pounds since the Senior Bowl. So what is he cooking you?
Time to get a new chef,
Right.
Or and stop with the cheat meals or whatever you're doing.
That might have something to do with the regression in the speed, is if you've changed your nutrition plan and how your body, what kinds of inputs you're giving it with calories and learning how to process it. And like, I don't know what that timeline was like for him, but it's kind of a tough, very rapid fire succession of events and hurdles to have to clear to start playing with variables like that. But it was like the time was like, oh man, like that's not what I saw on tape. But then you say, yeah, I got a chef to try to add weight and you've lost 2 pounds in the last 5 weeks. I've got even bigger questions.
Yeah.
The other one I would say is Gunnar Helm, the tight end. I don't know if you saw this.
Sprained his ankle. Yeah.
He got a pretty legitimate reason to run about 0.2 quarter seconds slower than what I thought he was going to. Rolled his ankle on the false start on the first one and like didn't even roll it like out of the blocks. It was like the last little skip to like stop and turn around. Such a goofy time, but like Rappaport got a picture of it. He shared it, but he forgot to crop the part out where it said it was from Gunnar. So then he like reposted the picture and cropped the picture. And his foot's all purple on the side. He's going to test it his pro day. But that was probably the one where I'm sitting there like, I'm having an existential crisis trying to figure out what's going on with Gunnar Helm.
All right. Deebo Samuel is a Washington Commander in exchange for a 5th-round pick. And I think, look, I think he's going to be a good player for Washington. I love the trade for Washington's perspective. I think with a lot of their quick passing game and Deebo, it's a great marriage.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people are hung up on the compensation here of it only being a 5th-round pick. And I just feel like, why is everyone overlooking that they're taking on the entire salary? Like over $17 million. That's a big part of this equation.
Right.
And
I think matured contracts are not
right
highly coveted for 29-year-old wide receivers. They're just not.
Yeah, and Deebo obviously didn't have his best season. And think about all the opportunity that he had in that offense this year with McCaffrey out. Ayuk blew out the knee. He should have, you would think, monster season. Again, I think he's going to be a good player for Washington, but for anyone confused about the compensation, and that's what the feedback that I continue to get in terms of people that ask me questions, like it's the salary. They took on the salary. That's a big deal. By contrast, the Bills got a 2 for Diggs, but they ate $30 million, right? Like that's the big piece of this equation that has to be considered into the compensation.
Yeah. And I think it's a sobering reality check for anybody else that has a veteran wide receiver on the market, right? Like even when it's not a super sexy top end of draft class, you could still get a better draft pick for Jonathan Mingo because he's a cost controlled talent with some forward projection. of what he could be. And no, the chances are pretty slim he's ever going to be as good as what Deebo Samuel ever was, or probably what Deebo Samuel is going to be this year.
Yeah.
But it's the cost-controlled element and the opportunity cost of how many Jonathan Mingo swings of the bat can you fit on your roster for the price of one Deebo Samuel?
Well, about
it might
15.
be 10, right? Like,
right.
so
Right.
when you look at it like that, and I actually thought Micah Parsons pretty plugged in on all this kind of stuff. I don't know if you saw that somebody pointed out the Mingo Samuel discrepancy in value, and Micah Parsons chimed in on Twitter and was like, "Yeah, dude, it's a mature contract. Like they're taking on all his salary. It's a huge difference maker in the negotiation point."
San Francisco obviously transitioning in some ways, but also they got a lot to figure out, that team. The good news is they do have a lot of cap space, and whether it's Purdy's contract, getting better with the D line, you got potentially some questions at corner. I know they got some young players there that look pretty good. Offensive line stuff to figure out. I know it's great that Trent Williams is back, but that's a very interesting team to me that feels close and far at the same time.
Yeah, it's like when you consider the coaching and if they're healthy, what do they look like? But they still do. They're coming to the end of one of their life cycles, right? And you're becoming a team in transition. And the Rams have set the gold standard for competing through transition the last 2 years.
Sure. Yeah.
Within that division, and that doesn't help expectations. But I think the sobering reality is you have a nucleus of players, and you only have so much time with that nucleus of players before the contracts mature. You need to phase players out. You need to make new investments, and you got to do it all over again. Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at with San Francisco, and they seem to feel they have their quarterback to help make that happen, which is very helpful for a transition, having a known established skill set at that spot. But I think they're doing the right thing by looking at some of these contracts and saying it's time to make some changes, because I agree with you. They could totally compete this year, but they have a lot to do.
Yeah. Rams keep Matthew Stafford, the most obvious thing that always should have been the case. So I'm glad to see that happen.
Yep. Locked it in. That's done. Our Galaxy Brain script was fun for about 3 hours, and then it was done. That was it.
Yeah. I kept coming back to, I don't understand. Just keep Matthew Stafford. So
that's going to do it for us here today. Locked on NFL Scouting with Kyle Crabbs. He's Joe Marino. We appreciate you guys, as always, for checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your Monday. We will be back again tomorrow to talk more action around the league.